So simplicity in animation is one of those things that as a student, when I was learning animation, as well as now that I'm a teacher in animation, I see a lot of people misunderstand. A lot of times when students are working on their animations, at some point they will be told, keep it simple. And the acronym is KISS. And it's keep it simple, stupid, keep it simple, sucker. There's always like that last S is always just being mean. But the basic of it is keep it simple. Now, the question that often gets asked, and I was asked this week, is why should I keep it simple if it means that you're just going to take it easy? You don't want to take the easy road out. You want to push yourself. You want to push your skills, because that's another thing that people tell you. You need to push yourself. You need to try something that you haven't done before. Push your skills further. But if you keep it simple, how can you push yourself? And there's all sorts of different elements that go into that. So first off, the big thing is simple does not mean easy. This is probably the biggest thing. Keeping it simple doesn't mean keeping it so easy and so basic that you just breeze through your assignments or breeze through your projects and you never learn anything. You never push yourself to be better. That's definitely not what it means. Something simple can be immensely complex. Let me make sure I use the terms correctly. Something simple can be immensely deep and push your skill levels way beyond what you currently are. What simple means is keeping things focused. That's really the big thing. So when we're trying to keep it simple, what we are trying to do is we are focusing on what is the goal of what we are trying to do. Now, this changes as you grow as an animator or an artist or whatever it is that you are doing. So when we're saying keep it simple, or when you're told keep it simple, what it means is stay on task, stay focused on what you really want to learn. So an example of this would be, let's say you're learning piano. You're learning how to play the piano, and you have to do an assignment of writing a song for the piano. Now, depending on your skill level, you would want to try and push yourself to that next level. So you're going to try to add extra chords and add harmonies and different things like that, trying to push your piano skill to the next level. You're not just going to play Mary Has a Little Lamb on one hand with one finger. You're going to try to push yourself to be trying something more complex or more detailed. We'll use the word detailed. What we won't do is add extra things that pull away from the goal of the assignment. Again, the goal of the assignment is learning piano. I'm not going to put an electric guitar solo halfway through my piano recital and then have a drum solo as well. That's complexity for no reason. All I'm doing is making things more. I'm adding more, but it's not adding to what I'm trying to learn. It's not pushing the goal of the shot. So that is the true definition. It is not trying to make your shot as basic and boring as possible. It's making sure you are focused and not adding things that are not needed. And this is especially true when you are doing the fundamentals class, when you're doing the body mechanics classes or anything like that at a school learning animation. Is if you're doing body mechanics, for example, the goal is to learn and understand body mechanics. So if you're starting to add camera movements and cinematography elements and trying to add character acting and multiple shot sequences and all of this extra stuff, that is extra complexity for no reason that isn't benefiting what you're trying to focus on. And Jupit, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate that. Thank you. 20 months, jeez. Thank you so much. And always with the raccoon. I love that raccoon. So, yes, we want to try and keep things simple. Focus on what you are trying to learn. Now, that also depends on your skill level. For example, if I'm totally new to animation, completely new, for example, when I started animation, I had never done animation before. I jumped into an animation school. It was a big jump. But that means that my keep it simple was, okay, I'm learning about body mechanics. I am going to try and just focus on understanding what it is that I'm learning. And not just doing it, understanding it. That's the goal of body mechanics. The body mechanics isn't just animate something moving with body mechanics. Done. It's understanding why you're doing it. Why are you moving the hips the way you are? Why are you putting the feet down the way you are? Why are you shifting the weight the way you are? So it's about understanding those elements. Now, if you come in with more experience, you've already got a good solid understanding of those body mechanics. Now, your personal keep it simple has pushed. You want to still retain that goal. The goal is body mechanics. That's what you're being assigned to do. So now you want to push that to another level. More complex body mechanics. Maybe include constraints in there, because that is a form of body mechanics. How do you lift something? How do you interact with something? How does the body react when it is reacted with something? Like, let's say I get hit in the shoulder. How is my body going to react to that impact? So we're still trying to keep it simple and focus on learning something specific. And this applies to anything. So when we're saying keep it simple, the big thing is don't try to add extra elements that aren't necessary to what you need. And now, once you graduate, this becomes even more important, because when you work at a studio, you're going to be given a goal to work on. You're going to be given a shot. So, for example, let's say I'm working on a film and I'm just started working at the studio. Typically, when you work at a studio, you're going to be given very simple shots. You're going to be given crowd shots. You're going to be given a hand just reaching for something and grabbing something. Very short, very background shots. And until you kind of get some experience, that's mostly what you're going to be working on. Now, if I'm told, okay, animate the characters in the background of this scene here. Okay, the goal of my shot here is to animate background characters. Now, I want to keep it simple. I want to make sure that I'm staying on task. It doesn't mean I'm going to do it easy and I'm just going to have characters standing there and sliding across the screen with no emotion. No, I want to make a living city, for example, or I want to have characters in a crowd watching the scene that's happening before them. But I need to stay on task. They are background characters. I don't want to add needless complexity and have a background character doing a big dance and waving their arms in the air, because the audience, when they're watching the scene and the character up front here is talking, giving their big speech, you're seeing someone in the background there just waving their arms and doing a weird little dance. That's going to be totally off target. I'm adding complexity and it's not helping anything. It really isn't. It's not making your scene any better. So it's a very fine line, and the hard part about this, and this kind of goes with many things in animation, is that there is no like dividing line. There's not correct and wrong, and then clear definition. It's all kind of gray. And you want to push yourself but not go too far. You want to keep it simple but not too simple. There's always like these asterisks to everything. But the key is don't just add complexity for the sake of complexity. It very rarely actually makes your shots better. And this goes for anything, really. So, for example, I've got some things here that we can use as an example. Let's say you're learning the piano, and you are tasked with playing a song. Kind of going back to what we had before. here is a song that I found. I was just doing some searching and I found this song randomly of a very complex song. Now, as I play this song, I want all of you to think, does it sound good? Does it sound appealing? And is it fun to listen to? And this is going to be a case of taking something, and we're not adding extra elements in the sense of guitar solos and drum solos and everything into this song about a piano solo, but we're just adding a lot to it, adding a lot of notes. So this case, this example would be, let's say you're doing a body mechanics shot and your character is just like moving around all the time, just constantly moving. That would be the animation equivalent. They're just, it's keys everywhere, but with no thought or reason behind it. It is just motion. So let's take a listen to this. So let me hit play here. Hopefully it'll come through. Let me turn it up a little bit so we can appreciate the grandeur of this. Isn't this wonderful? Ah, soothes the ears. Ah, you can appreciate the beautiful artistry. Now, I will say, it's just noise. I will say it is an amazing talent. To be able to play this is amazing. I can't talk while listening to this. This is going to be my stream music from now on. This is the thought, how my brain works, just going on tangents every 2 seconds. Let me tone it down a little bit. Okay. So let's pause this for a second because I can't talk while I'm listening to it. So that is too much. Yes, you're technically playing the piano, but it is so much noise that we can't differentiate anything about it. It becomes noise. And when you're animating, if you're just adding stuff, adding motion, the character's got to move, they've got to do this, they've got to do that, we've got to have a camera cut, we have to have a camera move, we have to do this and that. That's what you end up with. It's a shot that doesn't mean anything. Now, let's listen to another song. So this is going to be Nocturnes from Chopin. Now we listen to this. Let's turn this up a little bit. Much simpler. Here we can really hear the bass song, the simplicity of it, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. For anyone who's played the piano, I used to play the piano many years ago. Playing the piano is not easy. You've got the pedal, you've got both hands, you've got chords that you have to play. You have to try and keep to the beat. You have to read the sheet music. There's a lot of things going on. It's not easy. And even a simple song like this takes time and practice to be able to play correctly. But in all, it's still simple. And what it creates is something that we as the audience listening can appreciate. Now, the tricky thing here, when we start talking about audiences and whatnot, is every audience is different. Some people will listen to this and hate it. Other people will listen to this and think it's the best thing ever. Everyone is different. Everyone likes different music. Everyone likes different animation. So it's not trying to simplify to one thing that everyone will love. No, because there's always elements that people prefer or disagree with. Once again, the goal is that we want to keep our animations simple and on target. What is the goal of the scene? So, with that, and character design is too much as well. If you have a character design and you just add stuff to them, let's add spikes and bolts and add all sorts of colors, and we're going to have every color in the rainbow and everything in there, and then we're also going to add a cape, and then we're going to add a collar, and then lenses and pockets, pouches and belts, and it just gets to the point where it's like, it's a mess. It's just horrible. If you look at character design, a lot of times they're very simple. They have a simple color scheme, and then there's elements of complexity mixed with areas of simplicity. And that creates something visually that we can appreciate. Now, with all of that said, there are elements where we can build on simplicity. So a good example of that, we'll let this play here while I find this. I did have the link set up for this, and then when I got set up for the stream, the link just disappeared for some reason. My browser crashed and it didn't come in again. So let me find this. So we're going to go with a very simple song here. So let me pause this. And we're just going to go with this. Some of you might remember this song. If we take a listen to this song, let me tone that down a little bit. This is a very simple song. If you listen to it, it's just like one note at a time with a simple little bass line. That's it. Very simple. Now, the reason for this is technological elements. They couldn't go more complex than this because the NES literally wouldn't allow you to. You had to make music very simple because that's all you could do. So they had to tone things down. If they tried to make things more complex, it would just be noise. And you hear some songs on the NES where it was just noise. They tried to make things too complex for what they had. Now, the beauty about simplicity is that we can build off of simplicity. If you make a shot too complex, it just becomes noise once again. It's just too much to take in. But if you take something simple, like this song here, you can now build onto it and create all sorts of variations to it. So let's just see. I'm going to just do a Google search here and find, let's see if I can find a video here. There's all sorts. There we go. I know what to look for. So let's say we do this. So this is the channel 8-Bit Big Band, and they basically do video game remixes. And now you have something like this. Now I'm not going to be able to play too much of this because copyrights and stuff, but I like this song. Like, this is taking that simple song and now you build onto it. But you're building onto it with a purpose. They're not just adding a ton of noise randomly. They're putting things and elements in there and creating a flow throughout that. And they take this simple element, it's still in there, you can still hear it, but they've built onto it. If we keep things simple, if we keep the idea simple, again, not basic, not easy, not boring, just simple, we can always build onto it and add extra elements to make our shots more interesting. I really like their music. So, because of this, it is why Super Mario music and a lot of old NES, Super NES music is so remixable, is because they kept it so simple. So, kind of bring it back to animation, and let's bring our music back here. Part of animating is trying to figure out what your idea is, what is your goal of the shot, and once again, keeping it simple, keeping it on target so that you're not just animating randomness. Now, how can we as animators do that? How can we push our skills and make it so that we can take a simple idea and make it more interesting? Well, a big element of that, and this kind of goes to pretty much any level that you're animating, whether it's fundamentals, whether it's body mechanics, and especially if you're in acting, is keep your idea simple, and then simply add a character to it. And I've done talks on this before of when you are animating your scenes, try to think of who is this character that you're animating? What's the story behind this? Add just that extra one little element. And how would they try to do this thing? For example, if you've got a really energetic character, I can go full screen for this. If you've got a really energetic character and they have to lift a heavy object, lifting a heavy object is very simple. It's just lift, done. That's it. But what if they're energetic and they come in and they bounce in and they're just super excited and they're trying to grab on and like it's super heavy so they can barely get it off the ground. They're just trying different grips and keep slipping out of their hands. They're going to be very different and they could just be scrambling on top of the box. That might be a little too complex for the idea, but there's all sorts of different things we can play with. How is that going to differ from someone who is tired or lazy or just they're done with the day? They've already had a 16-hour shift and they're ready to go home. There's going to be a box there and they're going to get there. It's like, oh, one more box and then I'm done. And they're going to get ready and they might just like get down, squat down to lift the box. And it's just like they stay there a little bit before they lift it up. And there's a whole different reaction to this one motion of lifting a box. And this goes for pretty much any motion. When you are trying to animate, we are not trying to add needless complexity. We are trying to take an idea and build off of it. So a good example of this, and one of my favorite YouTube channels, especially just for analyzing things, is Kevin Perry. So if you've ever heard of him, he's the one that does the 50 ways to sit, to run, to whatever it is. And he's got these great videos. Now, what I really love about these is how he takes something and he shows the basic boring version first. So here is his video, 50 ways to sit. Let me actually post the link here so all of you have it. His channel is great. I would highly recommend checking it out and subscribing to it. But here we have his 50 ways to sit. And in this very first version here, there we go. He sits. And you can see it wasn't anything interesting. He's just standing there, sits down. That's not interesting. If I was doing this assignment or if I had students doing this assignment, that's too simple. There's not anything interesting there. This is taking that, okay, keep it simple, and they went, I'm going to make it boring. That's not what we want. When we're trying to keep it simple, we're not just trying to tone it down to the basic bare minimum. Now, as a quick test, great. But usually we want to add a little bit more than that. It doesn't have to be, again, complex, and now we're going to add constraints and all of this stuff. But we want to have a little bit more than just basic action. So, in this next example, man on subway. He comes in, sits down, and there's a little adjustment there. There we go. It's nothing that much more complex, but you could see how much more interesting it was, how much more fun it was to watch. And I'll just let this play through here. A lot of these are not that complex, but they add interest. Now, some of them will definitely be much more complex than others. For example, this, now you're having a character sit while clapping. That's a whole other mechanic. But we can still kind of implement these and try to find out what works, what doesn't. Like the teacher one, that would be a whole bunch of constraints to move that chair. So that's adding another level of complexity. Now, if you've already understood the mechanics of sitting down, adding that constraint element in there, that would be a good thing to add and build in that complexity. But not going so far to make it noise, and not adding so much that it just detracts from the goal of the assignment. So I hope this is all making sense so far. And once again, I do want to reiterate that there is no like black and white, no right or wrong, nothing like that. It's a lot of gray. There's going to be certain times when this, even something like this, is going to be too much and you want to keep it really, really, really basic. Other times when you're going to want to push it even further. But at those times, you need to talk with your supervisor, your mentor, your lead, and figure out where that line is. We have to communicate, especially as animators. When we're working on a project, every project is different. So on one shot, I might be animating, or one project, I might be animating things, and they will tell me to keep it at the core. It's only the very basic elements that you want in there. Others, it's going to be like add as much in as you can and just make it as cool as you possibly can. So we need to communicate, because if I assume, I might be going in the whole improper direction. Now, this kind of element applies to anything. So another example, and this is one that I personally like to keep very simple, is camera cuts. And this you will typically see when you get to class 5 in Animation Mentor, or for any of you who are practicing cinematography. One of the big things with cinematography is, like animation and like anything else, camera cuts and adding camera motion is not something you just want to add in because it's cool and it's just going to add more stuff. If I have more camera cuts, it's going to make it more interesting. Isn't it going to make it cooler and better and more awesome? No. Very rarely not. Adding camera movement, camera cuts, anything like that, really the only time you should put it in is when it tells a story and has a reason to be there. If you're adding camera cuts for no reason, that's what it's going to feel like, and it's going to feel needlessly complex. So for any of you in class 5 or about to go in class 5 next term, keep in mind that typically a camera cut should only happen when it needs to. And you don't want to just add a ton. Now, I've got a couple of examples here of adding camera cuts and just kind of the difference it makes. So let me open this up here and then I'll share my screen. So many of you might recognize this, and let me set it up here. Okay, there we go. So I've shown this on stream before. So this is a fence jump. So a character jumping over one fence. And that's going to be the whole scene. Let's imagine where the animators were animating this shot. Character jumping over a fence. Sounds pretty simple overall, mechanically. Now we're trying to create a scene out of this. How many camera cuts do we need? Well, let's see how they did it here. So this is from Taken 3, the infamous Taken 3 fence jump. For those of you who haven't seen it, well, prepare yourself. Let me just hit play here. Oh, he's going for a second fence there. Isn't this wonderful? Look at all the camera cuts. Let me just mute this here. So we have a lot of camera cuts here. For the fence jump alone, till when he lands, there are 16 cuts within 10 seconds. Let me actually set the time code here. So this whole shot here is 10 seconds long. And by the time we actually get to him jumping to the second fence, we've had 24 cuts. The 24 cuts in 10 seconds. That's 2 cuts per second. That is a lot of cuts. Why? Yeah, exactly. For all of you, like if you're looking at this on a big screen or like right close to your monitor, it's just moving all the time. It's just crazy motion. And we're not seeing anything. Once again, this applies to our animation. If we're just doing too much, too many motions all at the same time, what you end up with is nothing. And just kind of as an example here, this kind of goes into a talk like we've had on holds and whatnot. If your character never holds, if your character never stops moving, all you get is a character moving and doing things and constantly just shifting around. And as you can see, nothing stands out. It's just movement. Instead, You want your characters to move, do something, and then hold. This gives them time to think, time to have a thought process in there, and then they do something else, and then they pause and hold. So we create a rhythm in there. So same thing. Too much of something becomes nothing. It's just noise. And same thing with that song that I played earlier. Too many notes means that we don't have music. We just have a wall of notes. We need the silences. We need the pauses and the holds. So let's take a look at a few other fence jumps in here. So let's take a look at this one. So this is Jackie Chan from Rumble in the Bronx. And in this scene, let me mute that here. We'll have Jackie Chan jump over a gap, technically also a little bit of a fence. So let's just play this and see what we've got. There we go. Now, this scene here, we've got about the same amount of time, 12 seconds instead of 10 seconds. How many cuts were there? Well, we've got our first scene here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 cuts in 12 seconds. So definitely a lot less. Now, 6 cuts. Do they need these 6 cuts? Yes and no. This is where stylization comes in, but also as you're adding your cuts, and once again, applying it to animation, as you're animating, you need to think through, why am I adding a cut here? So in this scene, we've got scene number 1, our first shot. This is him reacting to the people that he's just been in a fight with. So he's reacting, and the camera position here allows us to see where he is running to. Nothing. There's no building there. From previous scene, we've seen that he's near the edge. So when we have this camera angle and he's running away, we got to see his face, which is very important. We get to see his reaction. Now he's running. Now he runs and jumps. This camera cut here is helping to show the grandeur of it. It's a very low angle, which makes it feel higher than it already is. We're also seeing the fence that he's jumping over, so it's very clear that he has to jump over something. And we get this really nice composition with the nice blue sky. So it's giving him somewhere to jump into. He's jumping into literally the great blue beyond. So we've got this jump here. We also get to see his reaction. That's the other thing with this, is we get to see how is he reacting to jumping off of a building. Now here, this camera cut is very important. This allows us to see the distance he's jumping, which, as we can see, is a very large distance. Now, you could technically not have this cut here. You could have just gone from here and cut right into here. But the problem with that is we wouldn't see his reaction. It would be an impersonal jump. Is that bad? No. But Jackie Chan films, it's all about seeing his reaction to things, which is always panic and pain. So we want to see that reaction. There's a reason for that middle cut. Now, he jumps over, comes through, and I should play some music so it's not just me talking. Now we repeat this twice. So now we have a really low angle, and then we finish the jump here. You see that jump repeat twice. So you can see leaves the building, starts midway. So what they're doing is they're just replaying it. And this is a very typical thing that you'll see in a lot of action movies, especially Jackie Chan style action movies, is that they're going to repeat certain actions. You see this in anime as well. They're going to do something and then they repeat it 2 or 3 more times. This makes it feel more dynamic, more like impressive. And we just can appreciate the moment a little bit more. Does it need to be in there? No, but it's serving a purpose of making this moment, compared to all the other moments, grander. So from there, we go into the landing. Once again, this camera cut is so we can see his reaction, and it's positioned in a way so that we can also see the people chasing him behind as he gets up. So all of these camera cuts serve a purpose. They are not there randomly just for no purpose, just because, oh, we need another camera cut, it'll make it cool. Yeah, no. It's there for a reason. Now, that jump is really something. Did they use cables? No. Jackie Chan did not use cables for this. And if I remember correctly, he actually injured himself when he landed here. And if it's Rumble in the Bronx that I'm thinking of, he also broke his ankle later on another stunt. So yeah, Jackie Chan is, I'm surprised he's still alive. Like, he must be in pain with everything he's put his body through. I know he has, like, he burnt the skin off of his hands during one stunt. He has a plug in his head because he cracked his skull. He's broken so many bones. Oh, he puts himself through a lot for those. So once again, we have a scene, once again, a jump about the same length, but not even, well, it's a quarter of the amount of cuts, but each one serves a purpose. Let's look at a few others. So we have, let's see, the overlap also helps readability, like cutting on a punch and seeing the punch again. Exactly. It just makes us really get this moment. It doesn't just go and gone. Now, is that set extension? No, they probably just filmed it on the street here. This is back in the 80s, I believe this was filmed. So, not that they didn't have set extensions back then, but oftentimes they just film in the city too. So this is actually like on a high building. If he slipped and fell, he would fall and hurt himself very, very badly. Now, let's take a look at another film here. So this is going to be another jump. Now, this scene is from Mission Impossible Fallout. So let's take a look at this, and once again, I'm going to mute the music, and we'll just listen to the scene just to let it play through. A little louder, this one. Yeah, another injury, exactly. Many of you have probably heard about this scene. It hurt. Just the sound he makes. There we go. There's our next jump. So let's just watch this a few times. I love this movie. The Mission Impossible movies are fantastic. So this film here, once again, we've got a jump. This one's 26 seconds. But how many cuts do we have? 26 seconds. So almost 3 times as long as that first clip. And we've got one. This whole beginning is one shot. 2 right here. 3, 4, 5. We've got 5 cuts. Now, once again, if we analyze the cuts, there is a reason for each one. And not just that, there is a reason for the rhythm of the cuts. So we have this first cut here. It is a long shot. It is just him running and running and running. The poor guy, he's just got to keep running and running and running here as fast as he can. Up the stairs, down the stairs. Make sure he doesn't trip. Make sure he doesn't do something. Like that's a lot of work right there. And if he messes up on this, he has to go back and run again. But we've got this really long shot. We've got this cool panning camera. It's really nice. Yeah, great running reference, exactly. And then we go into the jump. So here we have the jump, and this time the camera is following them, which is just a really cool shot because if you think of the camera, it's got to be on a rig that goes off of the side of the building and follows him through the jump here. So we've got this. Honestly, we could have just gone with this one camera here and then cut to another. He gets up and goes. Now, the thing here is we have this cut. We see his reaction. We let it linger here. Let him just be in pain. And we cut to this shot here, which shows his expression, which is pain. Now, for anyone who's heard about this, he is actually in pain here because he broke his ankle when he hit the building right there. Right here. You can see his foot right there. His ankle broke as he did that, and he kept going and finished the scene. So he hit the building. We see his reaction, pain, trying to crawl up here. Now we have this insert here. Why is this here? Well, there's two big reasons. One is we've just had a really high intensity moment. As an audience, we've just been like edge of our seats. He's been running, and there's been clips before, and he's doing this big chase sequence. This moment here lets us as the audience decompress, have a little bit of a laugh before we start getting back in. Exactly, comedic effect. And this is very important in a lot of films, even horror movies, high intensity, deep films. Good ones will typically add lighter moments, maybe not full comedic moments, but lighter moments, because they help to make things feel more intense. If you've always got your action, your intensity, let's say you're doing a really emotional scene or maybe a really high action sequence, and it's always here, always high intensity, high intensity, high intensity. Eventually you're like doing this, your highs and lows don't feel that different from each other, so the audience will get bored. It's just high intensity, high intensity, high intensity. It's very similar once again to a wall of notes or just constant motion. Constant intensity becomes nothing. No one cares after a while. So if you take that constant intensity and then drop it down, have a moment that's quiet, a little bit of a moment to laugh. When you go back into that intensity, we as the audience will feel it. We will feel that, oh, now we're back in. It feels even more intense. And you see this with horror movies. A good horror movie will be scary, but then they'll have moments where it's calm and you actually get to just laugh a little bit or enjoy the moment before they ramp up the horror once again. Because now you start to feel that fear build up versus just getting used to it and now nothing's scary. Except for the jump scares, which to me aren't really scares, they're just shocking, but it's not a proper build up. There's a place for jump scares, but they have to be done correctly, like anything in film. So this cut is very important because it lets us decompress. Now, we go... that foot just slowly raising up is so good. Now we go here. We see this shot here. This is an important shot because this allows us to see what the heck did he just do? Up until this point, we've got this section here where we see that, yeah, he definitely jumped a long distance. And geez, that's high. This one where we see where he came from and we see his reaction. But at this point, we haven't really seen what he actually did. So here, this shows us that distance. And wow, that was actually really far. So this just kind of lets us take it all in, and we still see him climbing up before we now see the reaction of him limping away. So every one of these shows a purpose. It has a reason for it. And they are used in there. Now, I mentioned earlier there's a rhythm. Essentially, we've got one really long shot here. It takes pretty much 2/3 of this whole sequence. And because we had this really long hold in terms of camera cuts, by now going into a series of quick camera cuts, so he'll hit here, and then it'll be cut, 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 cut. So cut, 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 and then cut again really quick. It's interesting. It keeps us visually invested versus one long cut and then another long cut and another long cut. It would start to get boring and we wouldn't really know why. It would just feel boring. Tom Cruise is awesome. He puts himself through so much and he works hard at it. He's got dedication. And how is the camera moving? I believe, I forget exactly the setup they had here. I don't think it would have been a drone, simply because a drone would be hard to control here. But drone technology has gotten so much better in recent years actually surprise me. And it would also help avoid having any track or cable that they'd have to run. My best guess would probably be there's a track on screen left from here. So over there somewhere. And as he's running, it's kind of going over behind these buildings, and they've got kind of a boom arm with the camera on top that's just following him along. And then as he jumps, it's just kind of extending over top. So that way they have more control, but it could also be a drone. Drones have gotten so much better. Yeah, the camera is the big thing. So we've got this jump here. And once again, a much longer sequence, but only, what was it? 6 cuts we had. So let's look at one more fence jump. And let's see, some of the Red Bull drone shots are much longer and more complex than this, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's a drone. Yeah, some drones are really impressive. So here we have Hot Fuzz, which if anyone hasn't seen Hot Fuzz, I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite films, and it's a great film to analyze cinematography and having cuts for a reason. So here we're going to have a fence jump. And let me actually play it with audio here. So let's take a look at this fence jump.
What's the matter, Danny? You never taken a shortcut before?
There we go. Not only do we have one fence jump, we have 4 fence jumps. And how many cuts? 1. 1 cut for this whole sequence. And it's just a little longer than the Taken sequence at 13 seconds. But you can see we get the whole thing. And at the end here, the point of this is comedic effect. Showing this character jumping through all of these fences and just keeping going. Now, the fun thing about this is how they hide the stunt actor, which is on the last shot here. He jumps over the fence and he just stays down. And the last person jumping here is actually a stunt man jumping over the fence, I believe, which is just really cool. Unless he did his own stunt, which that would be even more impressive. So there's a reason for having 1 cut here. You could have added more cuts. You don't have to keep it on 1, but in this case, having 1 long cut makes it funnier. It makes it more comedic. So there's a reason in there. So it's just there to serve a purpose. And I'll just hit play and let this play in the background as we keep talking. Now, what about the Spielberg long shot scenes with no cuts for a whole scene? Does it vary from director, or is that just for the suspense? It varies from director to director, and it's the feeling you want to get from it. Long shots, the reason that they're used is that they feel more real. We're not having a break in the action, so it creates this feeling of really being in the scene. The more cuts you have, the more we feel like we're in a film and we're jumping from place to place to place. The other thing that long cuts do is really let the actors kind of live in a moment, which is really cool, but also very hard for an actor, because if someone makes a mistake, they've got to do the whole thing again. So it's really just a different feeling that you get out of it. It's the movie 1917 or 1918? I always forget. It's a World War I film, and it was filmed to feel like it's all done in one take with no cuts and no kind of 1917. Yeah, that's it. Now, does that mean that they didn't cut at all? No, they did cut, because it would be impossible, or it would be extremely, extremely difficult to do a whole hour and a half long movie in one cut. Not only would it be extremely difficult on the actors, but where are you going to get all the film or the hard drive space to put all of that movie in one recording? what they would do is they would just hide the cuts, and essentially it would be like, as they're following a person, there might be a pillar here, and it goes through, and then it just keeps going. But within that moment that it hid behind the pillar, there was an actual cut there, and then they'd start the scene another time. But yeah, it's just creates a different atmosphere in the film. But the key is, we want to have cuts for a reason. We want to animate things for a reason. We want to put things in for a reason. And this, once again, goes to anything. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. And kind of coming back to the topic of animation, the real key is that when we're trying to keep things simple, it does not mean that we are trying to keep things boring or trying to get the easy grade, the easy A, the easy win. No, simplicity in itself is not easy. Simplicity is making sure that we focus on what is the goal of the shot, what is the goal of our animation, what do we as the animator want the audience to get out of this, or what do I want as the animator to get out of it, and focusing on that and using elements to add into it that doesn't pull away from that. So yeah, there you go. I hope that's helpful. I hope it's interesting. Yeah. And if anyone has questions on that, definitely let me